Please be patient with us. Okay, now, my name is Martin Victor, and I am a native speaker of English. I have been teaching both IELTS and TOEFL for over 8 years. I also teach spoken English and interview prep. And I've helped literally hundreds of students achieve their goals in both IELTS, English, and TOEFL. And so let's get started. Now, today I'm going to talk about practice. This is the tips about how to do well at home, to improve in speaking at home. And it's all about practice. And so practice, you want to practice every day. You want to make a schedule of it, but let's go really in depth in practice. Okay, so now the number one reason for scoring low in IELTS speaking is it's failure to prepare. You either don't have enough, take enough time to prepare, or you're not preparing in the right manner. Okay, so we have some people joining. Hello, Arjun and Shivani, Jat, Gautam, and Govind, Anupreet. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this live session. Okay, so let's continue. Now, as I said, the number one reason for failing in IELTS speaking is lack of preparation. It's either you don't spend enough time doing it and you're not spending enough, you're not doing it in the right manner. So, and I'm going to teach you today a surefire way of preparation. Okay, so now let's begin. Now, there are several common problems with practice that students present to me. They are, I don't have time, or I don't have a partner, or I don't have someone to practice with, or I don't know how to practice. How should I go about practice? And those are three really important issues regarding practice that you need to consider and you need to think about. And you need to, and sometimes you need to work around. Sometimes you may not have a lot of time, so you need to work around that to include practice for IELTS. So let's look at lack of time. Now, with lack of time, before you should start considering this before you even start preparation. How much time am I going to need to prepare for IELTS? So before you even start preparation, that's the first thing you should consider. Because, you know, we all have a daily schedule, whether it's work, studies, or we have responsibilities at home, or a combination of all three. And so you have to, and that's going to eat up a lot of your time already. So for instance, if you're working full time, you're not going to be having a lot of time to study as it is, to prepare. Same thing, if you're a student, you have to prepare for your exams and for study for your classes. And if you at home, you might have more time to spare, but you still have responsibilities at home, such as chores at home and such. So considering your daily schedule and how much time you can realistically devote to practice for preparation is important. And you should, like I said, you should do that before you start preparing. Now, the next thing is to develop a system to practice all the modules. You need, besides speaking, you need to prepare for reading, listening, and writing as well. So you need to consider a system that will include all those. And I'm going to give you some type of system later to kind of give you an idea. Now, the other thing you should consider for preparation, regarding lack of time, is what your strengths and weaknesses in terms of the IELTS modules. For some people, they might be really strong in reading or listening. You might be very good in writing as well. Speaking, I think, is the most difficult module for most people because for a lot of people, they don't speak that much. They don't speak a lot of English, and so it's difficult. But again, you want to identify what areas you're strong at, what areas you're weak at, and then you could adjust your schedule accordingly. So you might prepare less for reading if you're really good at reading, or for listening, and then maybe add more for, say, speaking or writing. And then you want to keep in mind that you should practice daily for speaking. Daily practice for speaking is essential, especially, since it's what I consider, I think, the most difficult module of IELTS. It's where most people have the most difficulty. So let's continue. Do we have any questions first before we begin? Good evening, Mohita, and good evening, my IELTS tutor. Good evening, Priya. Hello, Harman. Does anyone have any quick questions before I continue? Doesn't look like it, but if you do, please post a question. Okay, let's continue. Now, here's a sample schedule. And let's say this is assuming that a person works a full-time schedule, a full-time job. Here in India, the work schedule is Monday through Saturday, 6-day work week. So I'm using that as the basis for this particular schedule. So let's say Monday, Monday you work, Monday through Saturday, you work a schedule of, say, 9 to 6. That's the typical office schedule for most people. So you commute home, you have your dinner, you relax for a little bit, and let's say through Monday through Saturday from 8 to 9, you do speaking practice. That's an hour's worth. And that's really all you need. An hour's worth of targeted IELTS speaking practice. And then for the rest of the day, for the second hour, 9 to 10, you just do a module. So on Monday, you would do reading, Tuesday, listening, Wednesday, writing, and kind of repeat that, that type of system. Here you're getting, you are getting sufficient practice. You can adjust this a little bit to emphasize your weaknesses. So you maybe, if you're doing reading, if you're really good at reading, you can do reading once a week rather than twice, and maybe focus more on writing, for example. On Sunday, do spend some time in 2 hours, 1 hour of speaking, 1 hour of a module of your choice. So, but practice every day. Make some time every day to practice, and speaking practice every day. Now, but that's not the only thing. Now, the only thing that you want to do is you want to practice speaking all day, throughout the day, excuse me. This involves speaking to others in English. And this helps to increase your ability with vocabulary and grammar, increases your ability with fluency, speaking at length, and it also, more importantly, increases your confidence. So this is part of your practice. You want to speak as much English as throughout the day as you can. Immerse yourself. What I tell my students is that you consider yourself a foreigner in your own country. You don't know your native, you don't know your native language. So you come in and you speak as much English as you can with everyone you can, even the merchants, the people that you deal with every day who don't maybe not have a good grasp of English, but you try to speak English with them. So this is a way of practicing. Okay, now here's a question from Gurminder. Gurminder asks how to prepare for cue card topics, which we haven't heard or prepared. That's a good one. And I am going to refer you to the first video because I talk about that, but I'm not going to talk about that today because, well, I'll try to talk about that today, provided there's time. But how do you prepare for cue card topics that you haven't heard or you haven't prepared for? Actually, I'll take that question right now. How you prepare for that is you read. You read about a lot of different topics. So that's the best thing you can, because if you don't have experience for something, you have to, reading will give you some ideas. So that's what you do. Okay, so hopefully that helps you with your question, Priya. Okay, and breaks fall. Rahul, good evening. Welcome to the session. Now, when can you practice throughout the day? Anytime. Anytime you can practice throughout the day. During your breaks and lunch periods, during your commute if you're not driving, and while you're at home, while you have free time, and anytime you interact with the person, especially if the person speaks English. And you can find practice partners, family and friends who speak English, or there are Facebook groups where you can find speaking partners. And I've had a couple students who have done that before, and they say that's very helpful. Now, let's move on. Okay, not having a partner. I just touched on this. Now, you can practice alone, but the one thing you want to do is be sure that you record yourself. Every time and when you practice specifically for IELTS, make sure that you record yourself. This way you get to know what the mistakes you're making. You become aware of them. And this will help you improve a lot faster. You also want to make note of the successes, where you're doing well. This will help you tell where you're doing good. So now, again, like I said, finding people who speak English, these could be colleagues, fellow students, friends, family members, or you can find them through social media like Facebook, as I just mentioned previously. Now, how to practice the right way. Now, we have some key points here. Practice daily and set a schedule, and then practice speaking throughout the day. Okay, you want to practice speaking throughout the day, and then schedule speaking practice daily. Then you want to record yourself as you practice. Then find questions online that have sample answers. And actually, that's a good thing for those people who have questions about the cue card that are just asking, how do you prepare for cue cards that you have no experience with or you don't have much knowledge about? So for that, besides reading on topics of those, such as, for instance, one cue card could be talk about an aquatic animal. So you may not know too much about aquatic animals, but you can read about them. Maybe you can find similar questions online and have sample responses. Okay. One guide is the Mucker IELTS Speaking. It's spelled M-A-K-K-A-R. You can find this online. It's published quarterly, 4 times a year, and then actually 3 times a year, I believe. I'm not sure, but it's published regularly. It has about 80 cue cards and over 100 set of general questions. The cue cards have follow-up questions, and what's nice is they have sample answers for the general questions. They have a kind of a bullet point outline for the cue cards, and they have sample answers for the follow-up questions. And you can use that for ideas. You can use that to see how long an answer should be in terms of length. And you can also use it for ideas for, say, vocabulary, what type of vocabulary you can use. So hopefully that's another way of answering that question of how to prepare for cue card topics that you don't have experience or you're not prepared for. So I hopefully that helps. Okay. All right. Now, finally, you want to write sample responses. So, and yes, that may seem a lot of work, but writing sample responses helps, really helps. I came up with this several years ago with my TOEFL students, and those who use this said they did really well. It helped them prepare much better for the questions that they had to deal with. And you can prepare for with sample responses for general questions, for the cue card, and for the follow-up questions. And so let's take a closer look at those. Okay, now, sample responses. There's several benefits for writing sample responses. First of all, it helps you practice grammar and vocabulary and make necessary improvements. It's your opportunity to work on that and work in those areas. It also helps you work on your ideas, helps you come up with ideas. And this can be important because a lot of students have lack of ideas. So this is where you can kind of work out your ideas. And then it helps you become more descriptive and extend your answers as well. And this is important because IELTS expects you to be descriptive, especially in the cue card. And they also expect you to extend your answers as well, especially for the follow-up questions and to a certain extent, the general questions. And then another important factor is that they help improve the structure of your responses. One of the things that the examiners are looking at is how well you structure, how well you organize your ideas. And for the cue card, that's really important. So by writing a sample response, that helps you develop a structure. And then another added benefit with writing sample responses is it translates to your writing. It helps improve your writing. Now, the basic idea behind the sample responses is that they train your mind to think in the way it needs to think when it comes time to the speaking test. So you'll automatically know how to structure your response. You'll know how to start a cue card, finish a cue card, start and finish a general or follow-up question, those type of things. So they teach you to think strategically for this module of the test. Okay, so let's move on. Any other questions? Okay, how to expand ideas on cue cards. Okay, so Jad, I'm going to tell you briefly that's adding details, and I really want you to look at the first video. I do touch on that, but I think maybe we'll have a session on that in the future. Okay. So let's move on. Now, cue card guide, sample response guidelines. Okay. This is in terms of length. So general questions tend to be short answers. So 2 to 4 sentences at most, and it depends on the question, really. Sometimes the question may require just a short answer, so you want to make it 2 sentences. Maybe you could do it in 4 sentences. Time-wise, you don't want to spend more than 15, 20 seconds on a general question. Okay, so that's roughly 2 to 4 sentences. Now for cue cards, I say write somewhere between 225 to 300 words. And the reason why I say this is because an average speaker in English speaks 150 words per minute. So 2 minutes is 300 words, 1.5 minutes is 225 words. And your response should be within that time frame. So if you're between that time frame, you're going to give a reasonably good response in terms of length. Now, the follow-up question should be 2 to 8 sentences. Again, it depends on the question itself, but somewhere between 2 to 8 sentences. Should be around 30 seconds, maybe a little bit longer, but no more than that. And of course, the cue follow-up question, you want to expand on your answer. You want to add details. You want to do some explanation. Maybe give an example. Now, let's move on. How to practice with sample responses. Okay. With sample responses, you follow the same pattern, whether it's a general question, a cue card, and a follow-up question. First of all, you want to speak your answer. Just take the question, speak your answer, record yourself, and then review the recording. You want to listen to the mistakes you make and where you did well. So, and make notes of that. So if you had some grammatical errors, note those down. If you had problems with stumbling as you speak, note those down. Maybe you have some mispronunciations, you note those down. Or if you were able to speak at length throughout an entire general question, note that down because that's good. Then you want to write your sample response. Again, use the guidelines I've just given you for the sample response and try to work it out. And then when you're done with the sample response, you want to read it. Don't try memorizing it, just read it and then set it aside. Okay. First of all, don't try to memorize your answers. Don't try to memorize sample responses that other websites give you, because the scores are trained to identify memorized answers. And memorized answers a lot of times don't sound natural because it almost sounds like it's being kind of a robotic thing that you're just spitting out the words rather than maybe expressing feeling in the words as well. You're just saying the words and so you lacking intonation for one thing, and that can affect the score, for example. So you don't want to have memorized, responses. First of all, it's also impossible to memorize a whole slew of responses as well. But going back to step 3, you want to read the sample response and set it aside. And then do it again. Speak, record, and review. Try to remember what you wrote, at least the essence of what you wrote. And then you want to edit after you're done. After you review, you want to edit your sample response based on the review. That way you can work out the errors. So you have maybe some grammatical errors you can correct or vocabulary errors that you can correct, or things of that nature. Or you may be lacking in ideas and you can say, what can I add here? What detail could I add? What else can I add? Things of that nature. Okay. So, all right. So the key points for practice, first of all, start small and work to larger tasks. Okay. So when you first start practicing, don't just go straight to the cue card. You should practice it, but don't practice a bunch of cue cards all at once. So start with general questions first. Master those, especially so you can speak at length without pausing, without hesitations, without stumbling. If you can do that with a general question, start doing more cue cards and then follow-up questions. So do that. This will help you get, with your fluency. Also, again, as I said, record yourself, note the problems and successes, and then write sample responses. Okay, so now we're getting to review, practice daily. So you want to practice IELTS speaking and general speaking throughout IELTS speaking at least 1 hour a day, and then general speaking throughout the day. Make sure you schedule time for IELTS speaking. Don't forget to schedule time for the other modules as well. Then you want to record yourself during practice. You don't have to record yourself during general speaking, but when you do IELTS speaking, certainly do record yourself. And then write and practice with sample responses. As I said, they train you to think strategically for the speaking section. Okay, now, are there any other questions? We have a couple more minutes for questions. So far, the questions are about how to expand for unfamiliar cue cards. It's like I said, there are a number of topics. I list a bunch of topics in the previous live session. It's available on YouTube. Please watch it. So there's a bunch of topics you can read about and get ideas from there. You can also look at sample responses, say from the Mucker IELTS speaking or from websites that you find. And that should help you with ideas to answer. Also, studying sample responses can help you get an idea of the how to organize and how to structure your response as well. Any other question? Oh, Gurvinder, you just enrolled in the course. Congratulations. I'll be happy to work with you. Okay, so any other questions? No other questions. Okay. Okay, so, well, that's it for this session. I want to thank you for joining me. And so, forgive me, I just lost my train of thought. Sorry about that. Be sure to like this session, comment on it, share it, and if you want to know more about the services or more about IELTS, be sure to click on the link, and someone from My IELTS Tutor will get back to you. And hopefully, I look forward to working with you as an IELTS trainer, and I'll see you soon. That's it for today. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a pleasant evening. Good night.